Hello and good morning and welcome to Tuesday. I say good morning because it's morning, but it could be mid-morning, could be noon, could be early afternoon, early evening, or evening, or night, or late at night, wherever you find yourself on this day, and it might not even be Tuesday. Maybe you want to reorient yourself to a different sharing of our devotion, but this is devotional number 2, day number 2. It is Tuesday. Hey, isn't that interesting? Tuesday, but it's actually, Tuesday was named for a Norse god, I think, Twigs Day. Anyway, it is the second day of the week, and we are going to move on forward into Hosea's story. We have been looking at the prophet Hosea, who's playing the role of a lifetime. Think about that. Being in such close and personal relationship with God, the invisible God, the one who has demonstrated himself by many infallible proofs, and yet people have turned their back. And in the great last-ditch effort of love, God extends his hand towards them to let them know exactly what they have done to forsake him and to fail to acknowledge him. And there is a man who loves God so much that he connects into the heart of God and lives out this saga in his life. He assumes the role of Yahweh. He marries a woman who is a prostitute, which perfectly portrays the people of Israel and Judah. And they have 3 children. The first one is his, the next 2 belong to another man who shall remain nameless. Possibly even Gomer didn't know his name. But she had been given goods and money and other things. Probably a wealthy man who had taken advantage of the situation. And she saw some tangible benefits, much like Israel, who had consorted with the gods and goddesses of the region, who themselves were actually fallen angels or unclean spirits, one or the other, or both, or fallen angels aided by unclean spirits. And they found themselves falling into the worship of the people that had been pushed out of the land, the ungodly and atrocious Canaanites, who were deeply involved in occultic practice and cruelties and barbarism to one another. This was the land that God had claimed. This was the people, not because they were wonderful, special, salt of the earth people, but because he chose this small group of people as he dealt with his friend Abraham. And now we find them, they have declined away from the Lord, been deeply involved in secret occultism. And in fact, that's kind of a redundancy. Occultism means hidden, secrets. They had involved themselves in idolatry. Idolatry and adultery are synonyms in the Old Testament when God is speaking about his people, because they have forsaken him and they have gone after the gods and goddesses of this world. They've gone after Lucifer. They've gone after the fallen ones. And his whole plan is to seek and to save that which is lost. So we get to see that drama played out in the life of Hosea, and we've heard some complaints poured out. Then right in the middle here in the earlier part of the 6th chapter, we covered this on Monday, we have a hope for the future. There's a wonderful hope that the Lord shares. He tries to remind them that there is these high hopes. There's this wonderful destination I have in mind, but I'm going to have to turn you around, not by manipulating you, but by bringing you to come to see how it really is. Wow. And so we see this play out in history, and we see it play out in God's history, or his story, and we see it playing out in the story of Hosea and Gomer. So now we move on to the next couple verses, and like I'm wont to do sometimes, I fail to change the verse designation. So we're going to move from verses 1 through 3, even though this is labeled 1 through 3, to 4, 5, and 6. So let's jump in. What can I do with you, Ephraim? What can I do with you, Judah? Let me phrase that a little bit different. What am I going to do with you? Have you ever said that as a parent, or have you ever said that about a friend? What am I going to do with you? Can you sense the exasperation here? Your love is like the morning mist, like the early dew that disappears. So in the early morning, in these valleys, dew or mist would hang in there. We've seen paintings of that, pictures of that. But as soon as the sun comes up and it warms up a little bit, the dew point is changed in the atmosphere, it's gone. It clears out. And so he's painting the picture for them that they have this mist, this vapor that's there, and then it's gone. He goes on to say, therefore, the problem here is a love problem. And you know, love is deep in the heart. I remember as a kid, that as a small boy and later in elementary school, there were girls I liked and I wanted them to like me too. Did you ever feel like that? Send them a note and would say, I like you, do you like me? That was the ultimate of vulnerabilities. And I ran the risk because sometimes you would send it to a mean girl. A kind, sweet girl would send back through her friends, well, she already likes another boy, or her mom said she can't have a boyfriend. Sometimes they'd pull the mom card on you. But when you got a note back that said, not in a million years, you're ugly, or whatever things that a kid can say, you sit there and say, well, I didn't really like you that much anyway. Fortunately, it was the most surface feeling of kind of liking somebody or wanting to be around somebody and exploring the possibility that she could be my girlfriend. So there's a sense of that. I can really identify with that. In the heart of the Lord, do you sense that vulnerability? That God, who has created suns and spoken worlds into order, He's made mighty suns and galaxies. There's such a tender heart, such a vulnerability. He said, your love's like the morning mist. It's there and it's gone. And you know, you can't control love. You can simply see if it's there and hope that it's there. And there's no law that can be passed. You shall love your husband. Oh, okay, well, now that you've passed that law, that'll help me. You shall love your wife. Well, now that you've put it in a book of law, I suddenly feel it in my heart. It doesn't work that way. He says, therefore I cut you in pieces with my prophets. I killed you with the words of my mouth. So he has sent them warnings. He's pled with them. He's dealt with them. He's talked to them about their hearts. He's talked about their refusal to acknowledge him. He says, first I send my prophets to you, and they deal with you by words. Then my judgments go forth like the sun. What happens when the sun comes up? The heat increases, and it brings everything in the darkness to light. It illuminates everything. And so the Lord then acts in their life. He first deals with them by words. Then he deals with them by exposure of their deeds and calling them to account and bringing them to judgment. That's just a reality. First, he starts with words. Now, I'm just going to give you a tip today, and that's this. When the Lord speaks to you through his word or speaks to your heart, illuminating his word and highlighting it to you, do yourself a really big favor and pursue that word. Because if you don't, you're going to keep pursuing a path that's going to lead you into judgment. It's going to seem fine in the semi-darkness. It's going to seem fine in the darkness. But when the sun comes up, you're going to be caught. And it's not going to be pretty, because God will eventually bring his judgment to bear. So do yourself a favor. I know I'm going to do myself a favor. And I much rather heed his words to my heart and heed his words through a pastor or a friend. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, and very often it's by words. Then to go on down that road and be found out in the light of day to be really involved in some ugly stuff. So do yourself a favor and do that. He goes on to say, for I desire mercy, not sacrifice, and acknowledgement of God, rather than burnt offerings. They were involving themselves in burnt offerings, hoping to do the Yahweh religion thing, and as a result, please God and also please the gods of the valleys and the mountains, and find themselves in better relationship with the Canaanites and others who were idolatrous. And he says, look, my heart is not to bring judgment. My heart is not to have you be in a position of needing to constantly make sacrifice. I would much rather that you would move into the idea of loving kindnesses and deep, intimate relationship with me, not this distant, perfunctory religious functions way out on the edges and the fringes of my presence. He's looking for loving kindnesses. First of all, he wants to show those to us. And secondly, he wants to see those reflected through us. Not a religiosity, not a perfunctory religious practice, not treating God at a distance, but an acknowledgement of God and acknowledgement of God. If we acknowledge him in all our ways, he said, he would make our paths straight. Lean not unto your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. And acknowledgement of God rather than burnt offerings. Wow. That is a real reflection of the deep and passionate heart of God. So as you go through this day, this second day of the week, consider that. Am I going down a path that when the sun comes up, I'm going to be found somewhere I don't want to be found? Is God speaking to me? And am I listening? And do I remember today? Am I reminded today? Listen, it's not about perfunctory religious practice. It's about a deep and abiding presence of the Lord and knowing him intimately and partaking in his loving kindnesses. The psalmist said, your loving kindnesses, they are better than life. I want to leave you with that thought. Maybe you can meditate upon that today. The Lord bless you on this Tuesday, and I hope to see you tomorrow.